Hi everyone, and welcome back to video 2 of the respiratory system. So the first video I made, we were labeling this diagram, and so I wanted to continue, instead of doing it straight out of my packet, because that was getting a little difficult. We're on this page of our packet, and so I'm going to lecture on the material that would cover this page, but I've decided, let me see if you can see that. I've decided that it would be best if I just put PDFs of my filled out packets on our Google Classroom. That way you can know if you have missed any notes that I found to be necessary. All right, let's get started. Okay, so there's an awesome video on here that is a dissection of a lung, and you should definitely take the time to watch it. It's so cool. Oh, this video is my favorite. Okay, so these are vocal cords. And this is an endoscopy. So this video is really worth your time. It's short, but it's an endoscopy. So they put something down this young lady's throat, and she is awake. And they ask her to sing or make different sounds, and you can see the vocal cords. Anyway, so cool. I geeked out really hard earlier. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so our topic of today is going to be the alveolus or alveoli, and we're going to talk about the exchange of oxygen and CO2. I'm just going to go down to the actual diagram. That one's a little much. Okay, let's start with this one. Okay, so there are type 1 pneumocytes and type 2 pneumocytes. What does that mean? So within your lungs, it branches down the bronchi, right, into the bronchioles, and then at the end of the bronchioles are these little clusters called alveoli. Now in these alveoli, this is where the gas exchange happens. So I posted some sample questions from my B, and I will go through each of those questions in detail on a separate video, but I wanted to get into this particular area today. So the alveolus, here's when you inhale air, it's filling up those alveoli, okay? And then those are wrapped in two types of pneumocytes. So let's see here. So the type 1 pneumocytes are these flat structures here, and they really maximize that surface area by being flat like that. Now, what does that do? It causes a shorter distance for the gas to go in and out of the blood. Because you can see they are the ones that are ultimately going to be close to the capillary, which is where the carbon dioxide and the oxygen are trying to get to or get out of based on the concentration gradient. So yeah, so they're going to be flat. You can see some more up here. They're really neat. And we're going to look at some micrographs in just a second. All right, so let's change some colors here. So that is what is responsible for the gas exchange, all right? Those are the ones that when it asks you which of these structures is responsible for exchanging that oxygen and that carbon dioxide, it's going to be your type 1 pneumocytes. Okay, type 2 pneumocytes. What are those? Where are those? Here are the type 2 pneumocytes. They look like little bear claws. Little, see if you'll align that. Little bear claws, they are sporadically placed throughout. What are they really made for? What do they do? They secrete and make surfactant. Now, what is surfactant? Surfactant is a fluid, and the whole goal is really right here to prevent the sides of the alveoli from sticking to each other when the air is exhaled. So you don't want this side and this side to collapse in and stick together every time you blow out air. That's not okay. It could rip or cause some sort of abnormality or tear, and you wouldn't want that every time you inhale and exhale to have an actual lung issue, and you could get an infection. There's all kinds of bad stuff that could happen there. So it makes surfactant. So type 2 equals surfactant. That was one of the areas that I covered on my released items that I gave to you. So type 2 is surfactant. Type 1 is, oops, a daisy, is responsible for oxygen. Oxygen and CO2 exchange. So type 1 is O2 and CO2. Okay, so we need them both, but we really need those type 1s to be long and slender and really maximize that surface area. There are some extra structures down here, so I wanted to talk to you about those. So I'm going to scroll up. That is where these are discussed. So let's change to red. Yes. Okay. So right here is your capillary, and your capillary are the smallest blood vessels that you have. So you've got arteries and veins and capillaries. When you get a paper cut, you cut your capillaries, and if you sneeze too hard, you can burst capillaries in your eyes, or if you throw up, that can happen. Or if you just rub your eye, if your eye's really dry and you rub your eye, you can burst those capillaries. You may even see a little bit of red blood on the whites of your eyes, and it'll get washed out. It's nothing to be concerned about. And then you can see these red blood cells right here, hanging out in your capillaries. Your red blood cells are what make your blood red. Your blood is not blue. Please remember that. So your capillaries carry your red blood cells moving through those capillaries. So what is the capillary really going to do? So the capillaries fully surround. So these things are just absolutely in this really cool webbing of capillaries. The cells that line the capillary are called capillary epithelium. That will come up in just a minute. And so like these, they are thin. They really want to maximize that surface area for diffusion. And what are they diffusing? They're trying to get that CO2 and that oxygen to go back and forth. Okay, so what is this wavy section right here? Well, this wavy section right here is called a basement membrane. And that basement membrane right there is an extracellular matrix of proteins. Now, what's an extracellular matrix? Usually it's something that maintains the structure for a cell. Sometimes it can move stuff around inside the cell, but for the most part, it's just maintaining that structure, and it's kind of a protectant, right? So it's an extracellular matrix of proteins. So let's see, that separates the alveolus and the capillary. So once again, it's trying to keep it from sticking together or injuring each other in any way. It's providing structural support and maintaining that shape. That's very important to maintain that shape. All right. So that's pretty much that for right now. Let's see if I can show you some really cool pictures. There we go. Look at all the alveoli. That's so neat. So here are some bronchioles right there. And then these are your alveoli. Look like little clusters of broccoli. Very cool. This is a micrograph. All right. So it's part of your required stuff in the option for IB to be able to identify these in micrographs. So I thought we would try to do that. This colored image is rather difficult to do because most of cellular dye it usually comes out pink or purple, and it kind of makes stuff run together. So let's go to this black and white copy. All right, so the type 2s are going to be dense circles. Here's another one down there. So they're very, very concentrated. They come up pretty dark on the images. And then your type 1s, let me see if I can change colors really fast. Your type 1s are going to be these long, narrow, flat, rectangular in nature type critters there. Yeah, so let's keep scrolling. I think I've got one more example on here. This is a really, really zoomed in. We are at 0.5. The scale bar down there is at 0.5 micrometers. That's very small. So what am I looking at anyway? This is your basement membrane that's trying to protect the structure of the type 1, or I'm sorry, of the alveoli. Let's see if I can change colors really fast. This right here is going to be your type 1. Okay, so your type 1 pneumocyte. So that's, you can really see that gas exchange right there. Let's see if I've got some time, I can, whoops a daisy. Okay. And then down here, you've got your endothelial cell, your capillary endothelial cell. Okay. So your capillary endothelial cell. And then you've got your red blood cell. So this is your red blood cell right there. Oop, there we go. Okay. So red blood cell. There we go. So you've got your red blood cells. So you can really see how those type 1 pneumocytes, they hug up against that basement membrane, and then the other side of that basement membrane is going to be snuggled up against the capillary endothelial cells, which are really just part of that capillary and that red blood cell. And all that red blood cell and the capillary is trying to do over here is just exchange that oxygen and that CO2 with your alveolus, right? So anyway, I think that's all I have for you. Here's a very short TED Ed video on how the lungs work. I hope you've enjoyed today's presentation. I'll be back soon.